This meeting is being conducted electronically due to the current state of emergency and pandemic situation that we're all dealing with. If I could ask you to please, for those of you who haven't done this before, it feels a little funny, but we still do rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. If I could ask everyone to please do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Glassbog?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Mather?
Here.
Mrs. Stott?
Here.
Joe Granville?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have all members of the school committee, so we do have a quorum. So, ladies and gentlemen, some of you, this may be your first Zoom meeting, and I just want to make a couple quick points on what the sort of order and agenda is this evening. One thing I want to mention is that we normally do citizens' comments early. Moved it to after the presentation, simply because we think a lot of the questions that people have, we're trying to anticipate, and we've also received a lot of email questions that Dr. Ajay is going to address in his presentation. And then we're going to give any member of the public who would like to comment or ask questions the opportunity to do so afterwards. With respect to the questions, most likely what's going to happen is many of them Dr. Ajay will incorporate in a frequently asked questions list that he's compiling. We're hoping to be able to,
Mine get kids scared.
And so the points I just want to make on the presentation as well is keep in mind that this is a very preliminary step. This was submitted to the Department of Education on Friday, and it is subject to input from the Department of Education, as well as input from the members of the public who are, commenting to us on email and at the evening, this meeting this evening. And so, and even after we start school, it's very well expected that changes are going to need to be made in order to, accommodate changes that are going to happen as we begin our reopening. Another thing to point is that, another point to make rather, is that we still have not received any guidance from the state of Rhode Island as to which of these plans we'll be implementing in the fall when school starts. We know that some form of school is certainly going to start, whether that is our, reopening plan or whether it is a 100% distance learning situation like we had in the spring. We do not know the answer to that question yet, but regardless of what level we open at, we have plans for the next levels as we move forward and on to a more full and normal school, hoping to get to the point that we all want, which is that we have everything back to the way it was, which is what I think every single person who's in this meeting right now is longing for, getting things back to the way they were. And we are all in the same boat there, and we're hoping to be able to do that as soon as possible. Other thing to know is that back to that guidance that we expect to come from the state, remember that a lot can change in a month and a half. If we think back to how quickly things changed in March, the same thing can happen here. Week to week, day to day, things change across the country and locally that could result in, even if we have an expected plan, we may need to turn on a dime and change to something else. So that's why it's important that we have the various levels of options that we're going to be presenting this evening. And then the last point that I wanted to make is just with respect to the things that the school committee works with. We have an absolutely unprecedented amount of budget uncertainty this year. We do not yet have a state budget has never been passed. We do not know how much we're going to receive from the state of Rhode Island in state aid. We don't know which level of school that we're going to be opening. These plans all have additional expenses that we do not normally incur, that we are going to need to work with and figure out how to handle. Things like disinfecting classrooms, transportation needs, all of these things are not the way they normally go. And it presents us with a very, very difficult budget year. And we're working on doing the best that we can with the resources that we have available, which are non-infinite. There's only so much that we have and only so much that we do. One point I just want to make is for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom meetings, if you could please use the mute button unless you are called upon to speak when we get to the citizens' comments portion. Otherwise, we have 186 people in background noise and dogs barking and all those kinds of things in the background. If you are calling in on a telephone instead of using an app on a phone or a PC or a computer, *6 is the way you mute and unmute yourself. So if you are working on that system for the Zoom system, that's what. So having said that sort of a preliminary step, I want to turn things over to Dr. Auger, who has prepared a presentation this evening on what our school reopening plans look like. And Dr. Auger, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mr. Glasbog, and thank you to members of the school committee for hosting this meeting. Thank you to all of the parents and students and staff who are tuning in this evening. I know that the thought of reopening school brings up a lot of anxiety for all of us. It is a decision that is happening nationwide right now, and we are definitely a part of that conversation. I'm going to take this kind of slowly. My presentation tonight should be, I'm guessing, somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes to go through every aspect of the plan. A number of folks have already written in with some questions, so I have a pretty good idea about some of the topics that people would like me to address and really go into some detail on, so I'll try to do that. If you could hold, obviously, on questions until the end of the presentation, and Mr. Glasbog then will take over and we will, entertain whether it be questions where we can give a quick answer or comments. We're going to want to do so kind of quickly to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak if they'd like to speak. I'd also like to point out that this meeting is also being streamed live. So if you, I don't know if we're going to bump up against the capacity we have for this Zoom meeting, but if you feel more comfortable, you can just as easily get to this through the NKSD webpage and just stream it, especially if you don't have a desire to ask a question tonight. So, the first thing I want to point out is that the plan for the North Kingstown reopening is done with a lot of constituents already weighing in. We have the North Kingstown School Department leadership and the school committee, our parents and students, our staff, our teachers, our unions, the Department of Health, and of course the Rhode Island Department of Education. This plan is put together in response to Governor Raimondo and the Department of Education requesting this of all districts. They have asked us to put together a plan, or actually 4 plans. One that would that we are calling, full in-person education, where all or most, at least most kids are in school all the time, every day. There's also a plan for a hybrid version, and that is required where there may be a spike in cases of the coronavirus in our state or our town, and there's a feeling from the Department of Health that we should practice more social distancing. So that will create more room on buses and more room in classrooms. There are 2 plans for distance learning. One that is called limited in person for vulnerable populations. We'll talk a little bit more about that term. Would be the only students who are coming in. Those are students that really need to engage in person more so than just about everybody else. And then obviously full distance learning. And that is as needed due to the community health conditions. There may be some room for local superintendents to have some say in that, but primarily the decision about which plan we happen to be in is going to come from Governor Raimondo and the Rhode Island Department of Health. I want to stress that health and safety of our students, staff, families, and communities are our absolute #1 priority as we move forward with this plan. In both staff and parent surveys, that was identified as the absolute #1 priority for everyone involved, and we certainly understand why. That being said, how the plan comes out, there are lots of different opinions out there on that. And I want to thank the members of my central office administrative team, our principals, our union presidents, our union leadership, a school committee, parents who have weighed in and dutifully, given us feedback in the form of surveys, as well as our staff who have done the same. We also have an advisory committee of 35 people that includes parents, it includes a student, it includes school committee members, administrators, and teachers from just about every level and type of discipline in the district to really make sure that we're getting a full picture. And they've given us some really good feedback that we have incorporated into our plan. We value problem solving and creativity. This plan will not look the same as what we are used to experiencing when we go into school. I just want to put that out there right from the beginning, and I can guarantee you it will not please everyone. In fact, most of us will find something that, we're probably in some disagreement about, and I understand that. And I'm going to do the best I can tonight to at least explain to you the rationale for the decisions that we're making and try to be clear about the details. If you have questions about this tonight, you're certainly welcome to ask them at the meeting, or feel free to email me or your principal if you have further questions, and we're going to do the best we can to answer them for you directly, but also it's going to help us. We're going to be taking some close notes tonight, and we are going to put together a frequently asked questions list, which we plan on publishing to the community tomorrow or Thursday, and then keeping it up to date on a regular basis after that. So everyone is in the know, and there's a good place that you can go if you have questions about how we're going to proceed. We need to be mindful that we're making the most of our district resources. As Mr. Blasbald said, the funding that we have, the resources that we have is not infinite. In fact, the federal government, our state government, our local government are all asking the same kinds of questions. They don't know how much in revenue they have and how much in resources they're going to be able to make available for a school. So on top of all of the kinds of problems that we need to solve, one underlying concern from my perspective, and I know district leadership and school committee feel the same way, is that we don't know exactly how much funding we're going to have in terms of our bottom line. That still is yet to be determined by forces such as the federal government, the state assembly, and if need be, more discussion between the school committee and town council once we hear about those first numbers. So that doesn't make this planning any easier for all of us. So the bottom and the final value that I've listed here is a spirit of community and patience and understanding and shared sacrifice. I find it to be kind of a silver lining for me to see how much people have come out and have been supportive of what we're trying to do, especially during the distance learning period in the spring. But even now, people are reaching out. Our leadership has delayed any kind of vacation time they may have already scheduled or anything like that. They're working hard, and they want to get this right. And we all have, we want to put together a rigorous learning program. We want to support your kids in terms of their social and emotional health as well. And we know that we need to do it with health and safety being the #1 priority. So what I'm going to show you tonight, I believe, accomplishes that. And, I'm happy to, engage with you this evening about all of that. So there are 4 scenarios. And if you start from the right-hand side, the full in-person for all scenario is the first, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The partial in-person essentially means that if there's a need for further social distancing, this is how we would do it. Limited in-person, deals with vulnerable populations. And that's not necessarily defined very specifically. It essentially means that we will look at students' needs. That could be students with IEPs, It could be students with, who are significantly behind and have, learning needs where they absolutely need to be in. It could be an ELL student, for instance. And we will make provisions to have them come in under this scenario. And then if the coronavirus, surges too greatly, then we would probably be going back to a full distance learning for all scenario. And Mr. Blaswell mentioned this, but it's worth repeating. Just because I mentioned that I'm starting from the right in my description does not necessarily mean that that is where we will start on August 31st. Right now, the governor does not know which one of these scenarios she will be implementing. She plans on giving school departments some notice of that in early August, and then a more firm notice of that in late August, maybe about a week or two before we begin. So it's really important that we are prepared for any eventuality, and I'll also talk about how we go about doing that through my presentation. So for the elementary and middle school, this is under the full in-person scenario. The elementary and middle school would have all students attend every day. It's a goal of the RIDE plan and the guidance that we have and from the governor that we prioritize having our youngest students in the most amount of time. Realizing the needs of our community for parents to be able to go to work, and realizing that we can do this, particularly if we are using stable grouping, is what they're calling it, or use of pods. And that would mean that students and staff are organized in self-contained groups. For the middle school, that would be their team, and the students would essentially, for a good part of their day, be staying in one room, and their teachers would come to them. And for elementary schools, obviously the students would stay most of their day in one room, and the teachers that they have, their main teacher, and then any elective teachers that they have, or classes that are not their main classes with their first teacher, those people would in large part come to them. There would still be time for recess and gym and things like that, but those kinds of things would be diminished. As much as we can to keep those stable groups together would be the key. And that would mean there would be limited interaction with larger groups. So all students kind of in the morning meeting in the gym before they go into the school. Those kinds of things would not happen. All of the students going to the cafeteria at the same time with 200 or 300 kids in the room at one time. That would not happen. Those kinds of larger groups are not allowable, and that's one of the reasons why tonight our school committee meeting is not in the high school auditorium where this normally would happen. Large groups just don't happen. So we can use auditoriums and we can use cafeterias, but even when we do that, we need to have small self-contained groups in there. If there are two classes eating in a cafeteria, for instance, there needs to be 14 feet of distance between those two groups in order to keep, that stable grouping, clean. And so what we're trying to avoid there is that if there is a situation where someone becomes infected with coronavirus, they're not spreading it throughout the school. And we can contain it relatively with a quarantine of, at most, say, a classroom or two, and not the entire school population. There will be modifications to transportation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So there will be changes in start times at Hamilton Elementary, Davisville Middle, and Wickford Middle, and I'll talk about those details in a few minutes. Those kinds of changes in start times are made so that we create room on the bus. And one of the major ways we're going to be creating room on the bus is by having the high school population attending school on alternating A-B days. The high school is the best population to come in every other day because they're the oldest. They're more likely to be able to be successful with distance learning, and they're less likely to need a daycare from parents or another adult who needs to be with them at home during the day. So we see this as advantageous. We still feel they need to be in school and meeting with their teachers, and they will, and seeing their classmates, and they will have time for that too. But we're making it so that they will have that alternating A and B day. That means half of the population needs to use the buses, and it means we can actually almost double the amount of parking available for juniors and seniors at the high school as well. That will help us with transportation. They will have in-person classes on one day and asynchronous distance learning on the other. And they will be divided approximately halfway through the alphabet. I think it's like A through K, and the rest of the alphabet is on the second day. So every class meets every day. The students will go to 4 classes at the high school, and that's it. Normally they would have 8. They're going to have 4 in the first semester and 4 in the second semester. The reason for that decision is, again, in order to keep contacts low. At the high school, the students take so many different courses that it is virtually impossible to have them in a stable group like a team would be at the middle school or like a classroom would be at the elementary school. You might as well shut the place down because it just can't happen that way. And RIDE understands that, and they've allowed for that in their guidance. But what they have asked us to do is, within that, try to make it as much as possible so that students have as few contacts as they can. One way we see of doing that, and this is for staff as well, that they would now be meeting with fewer groups. So they would have 4 classes, they would meet with those classes every day. But in order to create space in those classrooms now, only half of the class is showing up on any given day. So the first half of the alphabet is on the A day, the second half of the alphabet is on the B day. Their teachers meet with them, so the teacher is kind of organizing lesson plans in terms of a 2-day scenario. They know that with all of their students, there's going to be lessons that they need to perform with the kids in the room, and there's going to be another part of the lesson that the students would be doing at home. And that would be things that they could engage on with, instructional videos or other assignments that the teachers give them. Another feature of the high school schedule is that their day will end around noon. They will have 4 classes of about 72 minutes, and then they will go home. And what that does is it accomplishes a couple of things. North Kingstown High School is one of the biggest high schools in the state of Rhode Island. It has 1,500 plus students. We expect with the A and B that will be about 750 students, and that is about 1/2 larger than any other school in the district. So doing lunch is a major ordeal. I know to a lot of people it seems like, well, they can just eat in their classroom. What's the matter with that? Well, there is a problem with who oversees that, and so at the high school you have more students than any other school by far, and you have fewer support staff to kind of oversee that lunch process. So schools are generally made without social distancing in mind. So normally what happens, as you probably all remember from your high school days, is you go to a cafeteria and there could be hundreds of students in that cafeteria and a few adults who are overseeing that process. We would not be able to do that. It would become a major issue to roll that out. So what this does is it allows us to give students lunch on the way out the door. They get to go home around noon, and the teachers have time for their lunch and for some planning time, and then there is, what we're calling office time. And that means that those teachers can then engage with the students who happen to be at home that day, or the students who were in school and now are at home and have some more questions for them. So those teachers are engaging with them for the required time for their classes, but it's just going to look a little bit different. And you will see that this plan is loaded with it's going to look a little bit different. The way the pandemic is playing out and the need for social distancing is requiring all kinds of creative ideas like this one, and I feel this is a very good way to solve this problem. It also helps us with the return ride home for high school and middle school, particularly the middle school. When we talked about our busing plan, we were thinking maybe we would have, about 10 general stops around the district and a requirement for middle and high school kids to walk a little further distance than before. This scenario makes it so that the middle school run will be on its own. So there'll be even more room on that middle school run, and 6th and 7th graders will not have to walk as far. The bus stops will get more into their neighborhoods, and it will be an easier process for them to get home and for the high school to get home. And then be ready for what will be 3 rides for the elementary. We normally have 2. So that opens up more room on elementary buses as well. So under the full in-person scenario, and this is really for every scenario, our expectation is that all students and staff will wear masks and face coverings. Exceptions for this will be settings where people can easily and continuously maintain 6 feet social distancing per ride guidance. Now, every classroom in the North Kingstown School Department is not exactly the same size, and every cap in terms of the number of students in a room will not be the same, particularly if some kids are at home because they're distance learning for the year or part of the year or they're sick. So even though the numbers that I've been throwing out to you are like 30 and 15, the class sizes in North Kingstown remain the same. So in kindergarten, the class cap is 19 kids. So under our scenario, there would never be 30 people in the room. There will be 19 students at most, and in most cases it's less than that, and a teacher and possibly a teaching assistant. And so the same thing is true, in those high school classes where we say the capacity is approximately 15. The biggest any high school class gets is 28, and most of them are significantly less than that. So in reality, under the high school schedule, you're probably looking at about, roughly 12 kids in a room with a teacher, and there could be opportunity there in any one of these scenarios where there are students that can be socially distancing 6 feet, and a decision can be made that for that period of time that they don't need to be wearing their mask. But if they do get closer to one another, working together at a table, or they're passing, and we can't assure there's going to be that kind of closeness, then we would require them to have their mask ready to go and be wearing it. And we will be stressing that over and over again. We'll also be stressing social distancing and regular hand washing. I want to stress to you that these decisions are not made because of Phil Auger and what I happen to see in the news or my political leanings or anything like that. This is coming to us from the Rhode Island Department of Health. I've made decisions in the past, as has the school committee, about the way we would proceed with school based on their guidance in the past. They are the experts in the state on these issues, and we plan to follow their guidance. If that changes, we will consider changes along with them. But until then, that's the guidance that we have, and that's what we intend to follow. The elementary and middle school classrooms, as I mentioned, will be in stable group pods. The high school classroom capacity is about 15, but again, no pods. There's no gatherings in cafeterias, auditoriums, gyms, and playgrounds. And as a special note, I know a lot of you are concerned about the athletic program. We just do not have word on that yet. That is something that is going to come from the governor and the Rhode Island Department of Health. There may be some modifications to what runs and how it runs, and we're just waiting to see. So we're going to, again, whatever guidance they put out and they consider safe, that is what we are going to consider as our guideline and the area that we need to work within for our decision. In the full in-person scenario, in terms of transportation, the middle and high school will be, excuse me one second here, middle and high school students will share the morning run, and right now we're looking at a start time that is similar for the middle and high schools. That would be 7:15. It may be a little bit later for the middle. We need to kind of do these runs and see how they work out with the busing department. it may take a few minutes extra to get them to the middle, for instance. So 7:15 will probably remain true for the high school, but it may get adjusted just slightly for the middles, and we'll let you know about that. The high school return home, as I mentioned, will be at 11:50, and the middle school return run will be at 1:45, which is already the time that the high school in regular time comes home. There will be modified middle school and high school stops. They may not look exactly like you're used to seeing them. There may be a little bit more of a walking requirement in some neighborhoods, but we realize not all NK neighborhoods are the same, and some have sidewalks, some don't, and we'll be mindful of that as well. So we're going to try to do the best we can to get into as many neighborhoods. What we have for the middle school. Now it's going to be Hamilton start time. The other L's are going to start and end on their regular time. So there's limited or no change to the regular elementary bus stops. And again, NKSD is going to encourage parents to transport on their own and use carpooling wherever possible. And you already have a survey to you, asking if you can do that. And if you can, we definitely hope that you will. Now that's going to present more of a chore for us, morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. When we get that, and each school will, communicate with parents about how we would do that. If we would stagger the times where the cars come in as opposed to buses and that sort of thing, just to make it as smooth as we possibly can when that's happening. All students who commit to busing will be assigned to a bus and a seat. And it'll be under a full person scenario. That's only one student per seat. So, our bus runs vary. Some of them are pretty packed and some of them are not. Now we're going to have to make sure that, generally speaking, on a bus, that means roughly 22 or 23 students are going to be on that bus. And that's it. So if we run into situations where, after we get our polling of all of our parents back about what they can do for their transportation, we have to make some modifications to runs to make sure that those things happen and that we get, under any circumstances, no more than that number 22 or 23. We may have to make a few changes, but we expect that they will be limited. We do not anticipate that there will be any changes to the special education transportation at this time. Those of you with students with special needs and need special transportation, you will be contacted about your bus schedule, and we don't anticipate that will change all that much. The details on the transportation options are already, there's a survey already out to families. I hope that we will complete that right away. We're going to send out a reminder tomorrow, and that you can work with us. And I'm thinking that we, without any additions to our current bus fleet, which is just not available to us under any circumstances, that we can make this work. But again, it's going to be a whole community cooperative effort. So the second scenario is a scenario where we need to social distance more. And so the pre-K through 12 now will attend on the same weekly schedule. So that will mean that the Monday will do all distance learning under that scenario. That everyone will be home and that teachers will engage with students from home. We expect whenever there is distance learning, by the way, going forward, and I'll talk more about this as the presentation goes on, but that we will follow regular school schedules, and we will expect students and teachers to engage with one another just like it's a regular school day. So I know that that didn't always happen in a lot of situations in spring. We are dedicated now that we've had a lot of experience with this, that we will be able to do that. So on Tuesday through Friday, there'll be that 50% in person and 50% distance. So if you're in person, obviously you're working with your teacher. If you're distance, you'll be doing asynchronous lessons because the teacher will be busy with the other half of the class. The same scenario that I presented for the high school earlier would take place on Tuesday through Friday for the entire district under this scenario. And again, that's because the cases are spiking in the state of Rhode Island, and that the governor is insisting that we need to have a more modified schedule with more room between students. And in those situations, I'm confident that in just about every classroom, we would be able to have that kind of 6 feet of social distancing at all times that we would definitely need. So this, in that respect, provides, that kind of support. Again, it says no more than approximately 15 in any classroom, but again, that's looking at every classroom being about half of its original size, and we don't have any classroom in the district that has 30 students in it. So it would be significantly less than 15 in most cases. There will be additional spacing on buses because of this. So if we were at 22 or so, that may mean that almost every other seat is a student now, and all the more room on buses for kids to be going in. And in all of our scenarios, there would be opportunities for more of an in-person, schedule for anyone who has a vulnerable needs, whether it's special ed or for any other reason that we determine, there's a need for that person to be in. If we can make that happen, we will. And this is going to be following, RIDE guidance again, in terms of how they define that and working with us. The limited in person, as I mentioned, most of us under that is distance learning. And, similar to, what I just, mentioned in terms of where we were in the spring and, every day. But there may be some of the vulnerable population that need to be in, and we would make allowances to have them come in at least on some days. And then the full distance learning scenario is where every student is in distance learning mode, everyone is working from home, and there will be everyday online engagement with the teacher and coursework. We expect, like I said, that all of our classes at that point would happen online. The students would be expected to engage just like it's a regular school day. And we feel that with the kinds of professional development and the support of our Kansas Learning Management System, which I'm going to explain, that we will be able to make that happen. So the Learning Management System is a product that you may be familiar with Google Classroom. That is a version of it, and compared to what we have invested in, it is really, this will be a very much ramped up version of the learning management system, one of the best in business. We had a number of constituents in the community look this over and help us. A lot of teachers in this group helping us make a decision on this, and we feel that it would help with communication, that all of our K-12 system are on the Canvas Learning Management System. It will work in sync with Aspen. It will replace Google Classroom for all, course communications, or at least most of them. It will assist with improved coordination of grade level resources and learning expectations. It will be used in all scenarios for all students. So even full, in person, we're going to expect our teachers are going to be posting all of their lesson plans and their course expectations, access to all online learning resources, and submission and grading of student work. So if you're a student, you have one place to go. You can see all of your classes. You can see everything that's going on, all the communications that you need to be aware of in terms of your learning assignments and how to, get to a certain video with an instructional protocol or how to take a quiz or a test. Everything will be there, and parents can log on to that resource as well, see things like grades in real time, any communications that are going on from teachers can be done through that. So it really simplifies the process. A lot of the feedback we got in the spring was from parents saying, I'm getting a lot of email from different places, teachers are on some different formats, and I'm not sure how to access everything. This will make it so that for the teachers, all of those resources will be contained in their lesson area, and parents can access them just as easily. So it brings all of that together, and it really makes for a coordinated effort, and it helps us as educators to be more consistent per grade level about what we're assigning, what our expectations are for every student, and it helps the teachers to share in their resources. A really good lesson plan done by a third grade teacher in one school can now be recorded and uploaded on the Canvas system in every third grade teacher's lesson plan for that week, and can be a resource that they can all use. So they can share in, not having everyone, create that for themselves. They could really share in that production of material and be more uniform in their standards for our students. We also plan, a big component of this is supporting social and emotional health. We realize, particularly, during distance learning time, that this, there's a lot of anxiety there. There's a lot of missing of our friends, and relationships seem harder. We found that a number of students disengaged through the process, and we did a lot to call home and try to keep students engaged, but we were not always successful. We're going to ramp up those efforts, not only for the needs of our students, all of our professional development and staff. For our staff, will be focused, on the needs of students during the pandemic, and we're going to do a lot with that in our calendar, which I'll talk about in a little while, but also for our staff. And there's a link there for some of the programming that is available to us through the trust that we will certainly take advantage of with our employees in mind as well. So one question that came into me a great deal over the last few days is distance learning requests. I completely understand that there may be parents that feel like, considering everything that I'm seeing in the news, considering my own knowledge of what this the coronavirus means, that I would just prefer to have my students stay home and continue all year to distance learn. So the students who need to make that choice, whether it's just a family's choice or for medical reasons, those will be honored. That can happen. The problem here is that the district just does not have the resources to set up for a full distance learning academy when all of its teachers are busy with students in classrooms in the school. We just do not have that resource available. So we feel like we are definitely going to make it so that with the use of the LMS system and with periodic checkups from teachers, that there will be some direct interaction from the teacher and other supports as we can make them available. So, and what I mean by that is there could be some personnel that are freed up to become, whether they're tutors to check in with students, or whether that we find an opportunity where the number of, say, second and third graders is in such a way that we could release one second or third grader from a school, second or third grade teacher from a school to work with those students from home. But the chances of that, I just need you all to know, are highly unlikely. We don't know if at one grade level there could be 4 or 5 students who need to stay home, or if it could be 40 or 50 students that are going to request to stay home. We just don't know that yet. We're going to ask that question before the end of the week. We are going to send something out now that people have gotten this information and heard my presentation. We will ask that question, and we will do an assessment. We're also going to do an assessment with our staff. if there are staff that, for their own medical reasons, are really finding it difficult to be able to be in a school building and, are going to request possibly to work from home, I don't know if I can honor that request or not. We just don't know yet. We're going to be working on that. But if there's a way to pair up the right teacher with the right set of students, and that just happens to work out for a period of time to do distance learning only, we will try to make that available. But I cannot promise that. And as we get higher up in the grades, it becomes even more difficult because now teachers are not just with one teacher anymore. And they have a variety of subjects, and a person who is not certified in one subject cannot be the teacher on record to help the student in those other subjects. Maybe there are ways that we can provide other kinds of supports, but we're just not sure about that yet. So this piece is definitely a work in progress. And I know already people have said, how do I sign up for the Distance Learning Academy? Well, there isn't one yet. All that we know right now is that the Department of Education is looking at a statewide distance learning program that they would provide. We do not know the details on that yet. We don't know if there's a significant expense to the North Kingstown School Department, which would make it difficult for us to do. But once we know more about it, we will definitely get the word out about that as well. And another problem with these two scenarios is that we could spend a lot of time setting up for people to have a special distance learning program at home and find out that on day one or 2 weeks into the school year, Governor Raimondo says, guess what? Everyone is distance learning for a long period of time. Then we would have to unravel the whole thing and get those students back in with their original classes and work that way. So every school department is struggling with this. There's no easy scenario where the numbers break down, where you can release a student from the building, a teacher from the building to be a distance learning teacher. You just don't know that. If I have, say, 14 third graders who need distance learning, that doesn't necessarily mean that I can reduce by 1 third grade class in the district, because those 14 students could be separated all around the district. And there could be 1 or 2 from each classroom, and if those kids leave, I still need the teacher in front of the kids who are in the school. So this becomes an incredibly complex problem, and we're going to do the best we can, but it definitely a distance learning program that is in sync with the school department would not even be close to the same as what you were used to in the spring. So I just want parents to know that, and to know that we're going to try our best, but that may be the best we can do. And again, that could be for a short period of time, and then the students will be fully engaged with every other student if everyone else is distance learning as well. So a lot of questions have come in. What are you going to do if you find out a student or a staff member, is testing positive? The Department of Health and Governor Raimondo are providing districts with what they're calling a playbook for school departments. And again, this is in that theme of we're going to follow the Department of Health guidance. They're going to tell us what we need to do if the school department finds out that someone has tested positive, or that someone is definitely, looking sick and they're in a building. What does that mean in terms of quarantining? Who needs to be quarantined for how long? How do we go about that in a normal school day? Who needs to be communicated with? So on and so forth. Those are not areas of expertise for me personally, or for members of our school department, but it certainly is for the Department of Health, and we are definitely going to follow their lead. And it makes sense that there should be one scenario for that for the whole state. So that is what Governor Raimondo's intention is, and I'm told that playbook is in her office right now and should be released shortly. And as soon as we have it, our community will have it. Our school nurse teachers and administrators will work directly with the Department of Health to facilitate appropriate quarantining, contact tracing, method and contact of communication while maintaining confidentiality of the COVID positive person. So those kind of situations are, they make us anxious. I know it certainly, concerns me about the role that I'm going to have in that, and I can assure you, we're going to proceed with caution when we, discover these things, and we're going to work with the right professionals in the state to make sure that we are responding in the right way. The screening of students and staff. I got a question today about will all students, be tested before they come to school, or will all staff be tested? Right now, we do not have a mechanism for doing that, and if that were the case for all of the students in the state of Rhode Island, I do not believe there is the capacity to do it. That is a question that is going to the governor, and perhaps there is something at her level that may occur in that line, but so far that's not the case. So there will be a morning home screening tool, and there's an example of that in the presentation that I sent you. That may not be exactly the sample we use for schools. It is very similar to the one that our office workers in the North Kingstown School Department use every day. And it probably will look similar, but obviously it has its flaws. It requires everyone to, to do a self-diagnosis about, their kids exhibiting any symptoms. And so we're hoping, obviously, that everyone is truthful, and that if any of the indicators or symptoms are, yes, that I have some of these symptoms, definitely need to stay home. And you need to, there'll be protocols for, making sure you get the right kinds of medical support to make sure that it isn't coronavirus before you come back to school. So that's really a key thing. And there will be methods for making sure that people have done that before they get on a bus. There will be methods about that, when they're entering school as well. And if we find out that, someone has come in and their parents have forgotten to do that survey, we will definitely follow up on them right away. And at that point, probably a school nurse will be engaged with that student and that family just to make sure that everything is fine and that we can proceed as we need to proceed. So that's the plan right now. It may turn out that we get more support or different kinds of directions from the Department of Health and from the governor on that, but right now that is the plan. So there is a school calendar. I think many of you know about this from the experience we had with the governor putting together the school calendar in the spring. There is one for the 2021 school year, and it is pretty much the same for all school departments. There are 2 holidays in the actual, in one version of the school calendar for districts who celebrate those holidays. North Kingstown normally doesn't, so we are going with the calendar that ends on June 16th. And you'll notice in the calendar that before the school year begins, there are 4 professional days listed for our employees. Those last 2 days, our employees will probably be in school doing, their professional development on site. But the other 2 days will be a combination, some of which will need to be on site for some employees, but much of which can be done, with asynchronous learning for them as well. So, for instance, becoming more familiar with the Canvas learning management system is something that we expect our faculty and staff to be able to start getting engaged with almost immediately to really get a handle on that now, and that would count toward their time for those professional development days. So this plan is evolving, and the actual plan that we have submitted to RIDE is at that link that you can get to, and it is, was due last Friday, and we have submitted it. But that doesn't mean we're done. We're still doing more planning. There is a ton of work in every aspect of this plan, and many people are following up on just about every aspect of it. We expect to make some modifications. We expect to make some revisions to the plan per further RIDE and Department of Health guidance. I'm sure they're not done in giving us whether it's feedback for our plan or just changing their guidance because of new things that they're learning. we expect to receive feedback from RIDE. RIDE has told us that they are not necessarily in the business of approving or disapproving of plans. So we'll take their feedback to heart, and if we need to make any adjustments, we will make them, and we will definitely make sure we are communicating with you on anything you need to know becomes any different, whether it's at your school or district-wide. And so this will be updated regularly as needed. We expect the need for more feedback from you, input from the entire community, whether it's our staff, whether it's our parents. For instance, we're going to be sending out something about if you feel you need distance learning all the time. And like I said, I'm not sure exactly what we can provide for you, but we need to know what that is. So the more information we have, the better we can make some decisions to help accommodate you. We will, of course, send you pertinent plan information and related surveys, whether it is, your students with special needs of some kind, whether it's coming from the district, it could come from your school, it could come from your teacher, it could come from the transportation department. So we urge you, parents and staff, to stay close to your email, and if you can give us some timely feedback, it's really important right now. We are, getting to the last week or so of July, and we need to be ready to go by August 31st. So that communication piece is absolutely critical. And so I believe I've gotten to the end of my presentation. I have. And, Mr. Blasball, I am going to get this back to you. And like I said, I am happy to answer questions, and I know a lot of our administrative team is on hand as well. And if there's anything that I can't answer in detail, I'm sure they can help me with that.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. J, first, I want to thank you on behalf of all the members of the school committee, your administrative staff, the teachers and community members that were involved in working on this plan. I think everyone in the audience can see that there are a whole lot of issues that need to be considered. Certainly not business as usual, and a lot of work went into this, and I very much appreciate the time that everyone spent on that.
Thank you.
Now, having said that, one of the purposes of this meeting is to give members of the public an opportunity to, comment and ask questions. We have 219 participants. I don't know how many of you would like to have the opportunity to participate in citizens' comments. We have the meeting scheduled to run till 8 o'clock. We'll see where we stand. I don't know if, what I think we can do is if people have a simple question that is like, how many students are going to be in a classroom, and we can answer really fast, we'd be able to possibly answer questions that are simple quickly. Other than that, I think, Dr. Ajay, I know you're working on a frequently asked questions list that you're going to publish and send out to the community. Many of the questions may be addressed there. And we also, would encourage anything that doesn't get answered tonight, feel free to contact members of the administration or members of the school committee, and we'll see what we can do to get your questions answered above and beyond that. There are probably a lot of people who are watching and participating in this meeting tonight. This may be your first school committee meeting. Even beyond that, it's more likely than not your first virtual school committee meeting. So let me just explain how this works within the format of the Zoom app that we use. And it's a little tricky because some people are on cell phones, some people are on computers, some people are on Macs, PCs, iPads. It's slightly different, but generally speaking, there's a button on your app that says Participants. And if you click on that, as a participant, you have an option to raise your hand. If you click that button, it puts a flag up for us, letting us know that you would like the opportunity to speak, at which point I can unmute people. We do ask, just like with all of our meetings, that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We want to have an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak to do so. I already see hands going up, so that means it's working for people. That's good. The other thing I'll make a note of is if you are on a cell phone and you would like the opportunity to raise your hand, you would press *9 on your cell phone, and that should flag to us that you'd like the opportunity to speak. We also ask, just like we always do in any meeting, when you do speak, if you could please identify yourself by your name and your address so that we know and can minutes what you had to say. I'm going to try to be diplomatic about this and just sort of go down my list and recognize people as I see them here. We're going to go that route. So we already have people who've raised their hands, so I'm going to call the first person that shows up on my list, and that is Sam Pinero. And again, I'm not always good with names. I mispronounce your name. I apologize. So, Mr. Pinero, I'm going to unmute you now and give you the opportunity to speak here. Or you may have to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, that's a woman. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I couldn't fix, my son was on it last. I don't know how to change it. So it's
Okay.
Pam Pinero, 710 Slocum Road. Just a few comments. Thank you for all the effort that goes in this. I appreciate it. I just want to say that I work in a nursing home and have been working throughout the pandemic, so I can really appreciate the concerns on all levels of this. So a couple of questions I have is, will kids with both parents being essential employees be considered as a vulnerable population? I don't need an answer, but that's my question. I also would like to advocate for the bus monitors and the bus drivers that in this tricky back and forth, you might be flipping through scenarios. I hope you could provide them with some stability of employment or some sort of reassurance to them, because that is a lot to ask of them, and to just be furloughed for 2 weeks and then we're back on. I just really think that's unfair to them. I understand what happened this year, but we have a great bus monitors and bus drivers in this town, and I think it's very important that we consider them and their financial viability to maintain them, as they are going to be critical for infection control in between bus runs and ensuring that the masks are in place and social distance is maintained on a school bus. I also, just from my own personal experience going through the pandemic, I ask for consistency with protocols because they can change. So communication is very important, and it helps keep anxieties less. I wonder if there is any surveillance testing recommendations for staff and students. At the nursing homes, we get tested every week. Will there be any sort of pool sampling or anything like that to see what the virus is doing in the schools? And I just really advocate for very strong mental health support for the teachers and staff in the buildings, as it is extremely anxious time working through this pandemic. I know for us in the nursing home, there's an anxiety about going to work in the beginning. Things get better, but I feel like strong mental health support for all the staff and employees is critical. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next person I see is, and again, I only know the name that appears on your Zoom, is AJ Pereira. So if you could unmute yourself, and you have an opportunity to speak. Ooh, I hit the wrong button. Sorry. You have to do it again.
There we go. Can you see me?
I can indeed.
First of all, thank you all for your hard work on this effort. I'm a paramedic, and obviously health and safety is paramount. Just a couple really quick things. Number one, I noticed you said encourage mask use. Does that mean that masks are not mandatory as far as can teachers request students wear a mask? And 98 Meadowland Drive. Sorry, I'm trying to go quickly so we can get other people. My daughter goes to Stony Lane Elementary, so I'm also just curious how recess and playground time would work with classrooms as pods.
I could handle those very quickly. I think the word that we use is expect. We expect people to be wearing masks, except where there's a social distancing of 6 feet or more. That can be, we can count on that. And that's staff and students. And we also, for the playground, the students would be going to the playground in their pods. So the classroom would go together. If there's more than one classroom on a playground, they would be separated by 14 feet from classroom to classroom. And I'm not sure that there will be more than 2 on any given playground at any time, but I'm not exactly sure about how that schedule works at each school. There may be an opportunity where there are 3 classrooms, but again, they would have to be separate.
Thank you for your answers and thank you for your hard work.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next person I see is Kimberly Linoe.
Close enough.
Sorry.
That's okay. Hi, I live at 47 Silver Court, and I'm a parent of a rising senior and a teacher, a high school teacher in a neighboring district. And my question is with respect to the comment that Dr. Auger made, that the high school students, 50% in school and shortened days seems okay because they are more likely to be able to handle distance learning. I would like to know what study or data you use to inform this assertion that our students can make meaningful academic process in a distance learning model.
Okay, that's not exactly a quick answer, so I'll leave that to Dr. Auger to get back to you on.
I can try to include some of that information when I put out the FAQ.
Thank you.
So you are going to be able to cite some type of a survey that says our kids can make progress. Our kids who have spent 10, 11, 12 years going to a classroom and now are suddenly thrust into what seems to be the plan for an entire academic year of 50% where they're completely left on their own. It's unacceptable.
Thank you very much for your comment, and as I mentioned, Dr. Auger will try to address it as best as he can. Okay. Any other questions or comments that you had? Sorry. Okay.
I have a million, but it's obviously very difficult in this environment, and I would really push to try to have something in person.
Well, we would love to do that. It's just not legal right now. Next person just says Shay. Sorry, I'm not sure if you know who has that label. If you would like the opportunity to speak, you do so.
Hi, yes, this is Shay Siciliano. Thank you for your hard work, as everyone has said. I know, I don't know if it was Dr. Auger or Greg that mentioned, this is not business as usual, and I'm very sensitive and aware of that fact that this is, I don't envy any of your positions right now, so thank you for this. My question is focused a little bit around the distance learning request. I'm wondering if it's possible, should parents opt for that, whether there is a possibility of having a camera in the classroom so that the students learning from home, again, optionally, if they should so choose or need to for medical reasons, if they're able to benefit from that in-person, or I guess that classroom instruction via filmed camera instead of, obviously being in the classroom. I know the plan right now mentions, periodic interaction with the teacher, but I'm curious if cameras are an option to stream those lessons live.
I can handle that pretty quickly. We have had some discussions with our teachers union about that. We both feel a little uneasy about that in terms of privacy matters, but also I know that a number of our teachers are a little concerned about doing that. So there may be some opportunities there on a voluntary basis if that becomes part of an option, but that would need to be something that we would need to work out with our teachers union for that. So it is something that we're kind of looking into, but again, I can't make promises on that either.
Yeah, I appreciate that and understood, and I think, I don't know, obviously you'll know more in the coming days once you put out that survey as to who's interested, but I feel like if there is a good majority, it may become a more pressing issue, and if there's not just one or two, right, I'm hoping that it can be considered as the process goes on, so thank you.
As a rule, our teachers union is against it, but I don't know if there may be some opportunities where on a voluntary basis that may be an available option for us. I just don't know yet.
And just as a quick follow-up to that, should a student or a family choose distance learning to start, is there anything against, going back? Like, say if I wanted to test the waters for the first couple months, but then felt more comfortable with the COVID situation, is there a possibility to change course at that point and get my student back in the classroom in accordance with whatever plan or phase we're in?
I totally understand, and I don't know the answer to that question yet, but it's something that we are considering this week and in the next few weeks to come. So once I have an answer on that, I'll definitely get to the whole community with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next person I see is Allison Hall.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
You can, thank you.
Yes.
So we live at 31 Hideaway Lane, and we have two students, one at DMS and one at NK High School. And one of the concerns that we have as we try to put a carpool plan together is both schools starting at the same time, but being 15 minutes apart. So we both work full-time and trying to coordinate how we would drop the two kids off at different schools. So just asking that you guys consider that when you look at start times, if there's any way to even slightly stagger, or if not, if there'll be any leniency in one of them getting there a little bit late.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to do some staggering. We just haven't gotten to a point yet to know rock solid exactly, how much time would be between the two. But that's a good idea.
Great, thank you so much. And again, I echo what everybody else is saying with, I don't envy the position you're in. It seems like you're working really hard, and I appreciate all of the support in putting a plan together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person I see with a hand up is Eddie. If you know who it is who has that tag, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can indeed. If you could just speak your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. My name is Stephanie Talley, and I'm at 2140 Boston Neck Road. Thank you for everything you guys are doing to put a plan together, and I appreciate keeping us all in the loop and engaged in the process. I have a few comments. I liked Shay's idea of, or question of, potentially starting the year off with distance learning and then transitioning our children in as we feel more comfortable with the situation. I'm finding myself in a similar mindset at this moment, but also wondering for the people that do decide to distance learn come fall, would there be an opportunity to maybe create a group or allow us to have contact with other members within our students' elementary school that are doing similar distance learning as a support for those that are opting to use that as an option? Another question I have is, we have 3 children, all elementary school age at different schools, and wondering if there's a possibility or an option to utilize the busing system in one direction, but not for the other. So perhaps maybe in the morning, but not in the afternoon, or if it has to be for both instances in order to utilize the bus. I have a question about exposure. I work in healthcare, and I'm frequently exposed to COVID. What is the protocol for children whose parents do have exposure? If I'm alerted from my employer that I've been exposed, is it going to be process or procedure for the child to also be kept home for 14 days regardless of the testing situation in the school, or what the protocol will that be? I know there was a gentleman who is an EMT, and then also the woman who's a nurse at the nursing facility, and I'm sure that's a concern they have as well too. Because I also don't want to send my child to school and then keep them home every single time I'm potentially exposed.
Right.
Then my other question would be the students' mental health. I know my kids being home, there's been a level of separation anxiety now that they've gotten used to one parent being home, and we've talked about the virus in a specific way, but we haven't had to social distance at all because we haven't gone anywhere. I'm concerned about how my children will feel comfortable socializing, but also the social distancing being enforced. I think it could be very confusing for a young child to tell them, you need to stay 6 feet away from your friends, or a student saying to another student, no, you need to get away from me. I think it could be really tough, or the language for the little kids, or just how they can wrap their head around the social distancing part without internalizing it as maybe rejection from a peer, I don't know, I have so many different thoughts on it, but I think that's it. I have a bunch of notes here, but I'm sorry. But again, thank you for all you're doing, and really appreciate all the input, and from the parents too. It sounds like everyone's really thinking of all the options, so thank you.
Thank you, and those are all really good ideas, thoughts. I wish I had a really good set of answers for you right now, but those are things we have on our mind as well, and I'll try to include some explanation on those when we put together the FAQ as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Person I see is Matt Bourgeois. Bad at pronouncing, sorry.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Okay, I have an impossible to pronounce name too, so I don't fault anyone.
Yes, no worries. It's Matt Bourgeois, 123 Country Hill Lane. So you were pretty close. Well done. Again, I want to ditto what everybody's saying. I appreciate the efforts by the entire school committee and school staff for everything you're trying to put together. We appreciate it, and keeping our kids in your thoughts for their safety. Mine's probably maybe a little simpler question, or maybe it's not. I saw the comment about the 4 classes. So if each student is going to take those 4 classes, I have a rising junior. So if are they going to be just a core subject, so no electives, or anything like that, or will it, how will that be handled?
Yeah.
And if it is, sorry, go ahead, you can answer that first.
Okay, so that's an excellent question. I wanted to go deeper into that, and I kind of forgot with some other topics along the presentation. So a good chance, I'll talk a little bit about that now. So the students are going to take 4 of their classes in the first semester and another 4 in the second. So over the course of the year, they are going to take what they normally have 8 periods through the whole year. But taking 4 in the first semester means that their number of contacts is reduced in the first semester, and then a similar low number of contacts or lower in the second semester. We realize that that's going to cause some issues for students, for instance, who are used to a regular kind of schedule where AP test comes in the spring and they're just at a certain point where they're ready for that. We're going to try to front load as much as we can with those kinds of courses like AP. And we realize that this will not be perfect, right? Some of the ways that we used to do courses at the high school are going to look a little bit different. It's going to mean some modification for teachers, and it's going to mean some modification for students. But here's an example of that priority system. We of course prioritize, having a robust and rigorous, teaching and learning, but we also particularly at the high school where they can't be in a self-contained pod, we want to make it so that they have as few contacts as possible. So we're prioritizing the health aspect of this. So that's why we chose that 4 schedule. So they're not just taking their course. They're taking the same 8 they would have taken otherwise. They're just doing 4 of them in the fall and then another 4 in the spring.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. And will there be any changes, or will there be any need for changes for graduation requirements or anything of that sort?
I don't expect any right now.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next person I see here is Tim Davis. Again, if you could speak your name and your address.
Yes, Tim Davis, 77 Oakdale Road. So my question was about some of the schools that have the open concept classrooms where you might have 3 separate classes separated by dividers. Does that count as a single room or 3 rooms?
That counts as 3 rooms. We had a lot of discussion with the Department of Health on that, and they confirmed that can count as 3 rooms. We realize it's not quite the same as having that wall that goes to the ceiling, obviously, but that's how we're going to be working. Yeah.
Okay, and then I do apologize. I have like 3, and I figured that would be one you could answer, so I apologize. So you mentioned that when we did the distance learning last year, there wasn't always that feel of the real school day. But this year, that's not going to be the case. Are we talking 6 hours in the seat, when we're in a distance learning scenario. As though they're in a class, if we can't stream the class live, like some of the other folks have been talking about. Is that what that means?
I don't know exactly the details on that. I think that's to be determined,
Okay.
but it would definitely feel a lot more like the regular school day. Where they'd be expected to be kind of engaged in all the different coursework they need at the appropriate time. There'd probably be breaks for things like, what would normally be recess or lunch, obviously, that sort of thing. So, just like they would be in a school day. But, from my level, I would certainly leave for, the elementary educators and the principals to kind of sort out.
Okay. And then the last one was really just, you mentioned with the seniors going, with the high school kids going home at noon because you just can't do lunch. Is there a plan to do lunch differently at the various elementary schools and middle schools yet?
Yes. So their lunches, a lot of which would happen in the classroom, and it would be supervised by an available teaching assistant. That teaching assistant may have had another kind of assignment at that time, but would for the sake of having this organizational plan put together. Again, I can't have 150 students in a cafeteria with 2 or 3 teaching assistants overseeing the whole thing. They're going to have to go to the rooms. There may be some groups that actually do go to the cafeteria, but it'd be very few of them. And we'd have to make the best of it that way. So it would really be like an all hands on deck kind of approach. It's amazing how much effort and coordination just goes into giving kids lunch in school that most of us in our community just don't appreciate that. But it really is quite a process. And obviously, the smaller the school and the more support staff you have in that school, those things become a little bit easier. High school the size of North Kingstown High School, it actually becomes a real test of what we're capable of doing, believe it or not. So.
Well, I believe it 100%, sir. And I just want to say that, from day one when you sent out the note about this is the expectation of the parents, the kids, the teachers, of myself, I think you guys have done a great job adjusting, and I appreciate the candid conversation where possible tonight, and I look forward to reading the follow-up FAQs.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, sir.
Thank you. Next person we see is Sue Alexander.
Yeah, hi, this is actually Bill Alexander. Can you hear me?
I can, if you just state your name for the record, the address for the record.
Sure, 211 Earl Drive. So I just had a quick question and then a comment. The question is, did you talk to other districts? Because South Kingstown High School, for example, they're able to keep their kids in the classroom for a full day. And the NK plan, even though it says full day, 100% in person or whatever, it's really not for the high school kids. And I know you've said that's because of lunch, but I'd have to think that, if SK can do it in there, not the same size, I realize that, but, pretty close, then there must be a way to figure out how to do it in the NK as well.
So I've had a lot of conversations with many districts, in fact, and, I'm not going to, compare ourselves necessarily to all of them. There's a wide variety of approaches. There are a number of districts in our state that all of K through 12 are not going back every day. And they have their reasons, and we have our reasons and our own capabilities. Every district has a different size bus fleet, for instance. Every district has a different number of buildings and a different number of students and a different number of staff that accommodate those students. So there's all kinds of factors that go into these kinds of decisions, and we felt that this one really made sense for us.
Okay, and so that's just the comment is, so I heard today that there were 0 cases, positive cases in NK, and I know that other towns, within the state there have continued to be cases. And so I wonder, with the first bullet, I think, in the presentation had to do with health and safety, why are we having the CTE program continue at the high school? Because these students are coming in from other towns to our town, mixing with, you know, our students in the classroom, and then going back and not really, you know, hanging out with other students from our town, but hanging out with other students from other towns. And, you know, to me, that seems more of a health risk than, you know, than just having NK residents attending NK high school. And by, you know, thinking about, you know, removing the CTE program for this year would reduce the number of students overall in the high school by probably over 100 students.
Well, I can, you know, I disagree with you that having a student from another town in our high school necessarily means a greater health risk. But also, the laws of the state of Rhode Island allow those students to access career and tech programs, and we're very thankful that they do. Their tuition into NK pretty much allows us to have those programs available for our own kids as well. So that's a big deal, and simply not having those programs at this point, there are so many of those students and our own NK students are already invested in those programs, and they are continuous in terms of their coursework. So they would lose a great deal if we decided simply not to run those programs. So that's off the top of my head right now, but yeah, I don't see that as an option yet.
Okay, just want to make sure health and safety was the first concern.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So the next person I see is Leanne Boyd. Yes, you're there.
Not Leanne, it's actually Keith.
No problem.
I'm sure it is out here. I just wanted to ask what's happening with the music programs, both at the high school and also the middle school?
Good question. So at the high school, we are continuing with the band and chorus, but it is certainly not going to look the same as it used to. For instance, our band could typically have upwards to 80 students working in one room at one time, a lot of wind instruments, for instance, and those, and you know, kids obviously a lot closer than what they would need to be. The rules that we have is actually, the RIDE guidance says we would prefer that you do this virtually unless you can make the conditions in such a way that there is 14 feet of social distancing. So at the high school, because you have, you know, half the school coming at one time and half at the other, so we've already cut, for instance, the band down to 40 students, and then we would further use more space, like available room in the auditorium, available room in the band room, and particularly when we have, you know, that wind instrument type of thing, we're looking at other provisions, like there are some like cloth that you could put over the instrument, that sort of thing. But even that, we're going to maintain 14 feet of social distance and probably have them in more than one room. So that whole band working together, that probably will not be happening. But students will get a chance to kind of perform with other students as part of the band. And that will be one of their classes during that day. Unfortunately, at the middle and elementary school, those programs cannot continue because we are really bound to do the pod issue there and to take, you know, some of the students on a given team go to the band. Some of them will go to the chorus, some will go other places, but they join other teams when they're doing this. And that's a violation of, you know, the contacts that they're supposed to have and staying within that stable group. So we're looking for other options for students to perform and possibly to do so somehow together, but I'm not sure how that's going to happen at the middle and elementary right now. And I plan on talking with our music educators in the month of August to see what kinds of ideas we can put together, but it certainly will not be band and chorus as usual at the middle and elementary, and it won't even be the same at the high school, but it will exist at the high school.
Right. Okay. A second question for you. With regard to busing, if we commit to driving our kids to school, but an unforeseen circumstance happens where we can't actually do that on a particular day, what flexibility do you have to allow the kids then to take the school bus? Is that?
We've talked about a million different scenarios, and we have not talked about that one yet. My guess is we may not have too many options there, because we're really supposed to keep that bus as a stable unit as well. So having new kids join, is difficult to do. When someone came with the question about I can do it in the morning but not in the afternoon, even those could be difficult situations where, the Department of Ed and the Department of Health are encouraging us to have the same kids in the same seats on the way in and on the way back, and only those kids. So adding kids to those groups becomes problematic. I'm not saying it can never happen, but so far that's the guidance that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. King, sorry, one second, Mrs. King, did you say you had something to chime in on with that?
Yeah, actually, so that really is why we were asking for information, because we are told that complement of students riding the bus does need to be the same. So what would end up happening is if we had a student who thought they were going to ride the bus 5 days but not the other 2, their seat would have to be reserved for them for all 5 days. We are at this point allowed to have 22 to 23 students on the bus, maybe a couple more for siblings, but in your scenario, if you opted to have transportation and we did not know this issue with you, we would be reserving a seat on the bus for your student. So that's what we were told we have to do at this point.
Okay, thank you. My last question then is what's happening with the sports programs at both schools, like middle school and high school then?
Right now, we don't know. That we're waiting for word on that from the governor's office and the Department of Health. There are some sporting programs running with like clubs in the summer and that sort of thing. We don't know if there'll be some version of that for our students, but I highly suspect that we will not be looking at what we used to with sports either, particularly with sports that are high contact like football. That's just my guess right now, but we're waiting on the Department of Health to give us that guidance. And that could come down, this week or in the next week or 2.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you.
Next person I have, and I suspect this may not be your name, so, but if this is your tag, Prestige Gymnastics.
Hi, it's Becca Baker. I work at a gym called Prestige. I coach gymnastics.
Okay.
And you're still logged in from my Zoom workouts. So it's 209 Edmond Drive.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question from a couple of parents whose children have compromised immune systems. They just want to make sure that the virtual learning, like 100% of the time, will definitely be available.
Okay, I mentioned that in the presentation. They certainly welcome to follow along with their class, but I don't know how good they're going to consider that to be. The resources that we have just are not there to make a full distance learning from NK, but we have some other possibilities in the Department of Ed. And again, whatever I can put together using district resources, I'm going to try to help them out. But I can't guarantee that it's going to be, a full plan for all of the students who are coming in and a full plan for everyone in distance learning too.
So do you have a recommendation for somebody who wants to 100% stay home? Should they apply for homeschooling, or should they kind of just stick around and see what happens?
Yeah, well, I would think they would want to stick around, but like I said, I'm going to do my best to give you better information on that in the next few days and weeks, for sure.
And is your better information going to be based on like the surveys? So if most parents, or many parents, or whatever everybody wants to opt
So Becca, what I mean by that is, let's say I find out that there are 20 third graders around the district who need to be at home. And we just so happen to have a third grade teacher who also feels they're immunocompromised and would like to distance teach. That could be an option where I can find a section at one of the schools to reduce and have that teacher work from home with those students. but the likelihood of those numbers panning out just that way are hard to imagine that it would work that way, especially throughout the district, right? You know, in some cases that could be a couple of kids at a grade level, and in some cases it could be 50 or 60 kids at a grade level. I just don't know yet. So we're going to survey that, and we're going to see how those numbers play out. And if there are opportunities that I can take to do that kind of thing, I'll try. But I can't make any promises right now. So that's going to take a little longer for us to get a good answer out to everybody.
Okay, so as far as 14 feet apart at recess, I'd like to advocate for the TAs and for their mental health. That's going to be hard.
I understand, yes.
And they're already very taxed prior to COVID. They were already very taxed. So I'd like to advocate for those TAs on the recess yard.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, I think that's it.
Thank you. Next person I see is Megan Chabot?
66 Charles Street.
Thank you.
I appreciate how difficult this has been for everybody, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys have all been doing. Just have a statement and then a few follow-up questions. So my fear is my son goes to high school, and there's definitely a population of students there who weren't super successful with the distance learning. And I fear that if we're 50% in the high school, that won't lead to optimal success for these students. So first, would there be a clear definition of who this vulnerable population is? Will we spell that out, and then will there be a way for us to apply, I guess, for our students to be seen as vulnerable? And then the other question I had is, have you explored any options for true alternative learning, something similar to like the vet school, where students who maybe are at higher risk and are struggling in school already, where they could potentially earn some school credits by doing internships within the community, and then also enlisting members of our community to help with that. I don't know if you've reached out to any businesses or parents. I know personally I would be willing to help in any way to see that successfully implemented, should you consider it. And that was it.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dr. O'Shea?
We definitely need to do a better job of defining that vulnerable population. Dr. Morris, you want to add something here?
Yes. So at the high school, we've always had a process whereby students can take courses at CCRI or through the Advanced Course Network. RIDE is setting up many courses with organizations that students can take online. So we are always willing to speak to parents and find what works for their student and be pretty much flexible by including some transcripts on the different institutions. So there's some to find out what works for each student. Personalization has been a major focus of the high school for a while.
Thank you.
Okay, next person I see is Chris Vogt or Boyd.
Chris Vogt, 141 Crestfield Lane. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I know this isn't easy. Quick question. I joined late, not sure if you covered this, but what is your plan for building transfer requests going into this fall?
Building transfer requests are still the same as they have been. And for those of you who do not know that process, if you are zoned for one elementary school, for instance, and you want to attend to another one, that would be calling my office. Karen Utini is my secretary, and she handles that for us. We make decisions on that in early August, because at that point we know what we're going to need in terms of teachers at each grade level. And if there is room in the grade level for your child at the school that you're requesting, we will allow it. But it's understood that you need to provide your own transportation in that situation. And you also need to understand that it is a one-year only deal. that if the following year the numbers change in that particular zone, and now the grade of that class, for instance, is now full with students who are from that zone, it may not be that I can continually, the child was in that school in grade 4, it may not mean that I can keep them there for grade 5. So as long as you're okay with those conditions, what you would need to do is to call my office and we can take it from there with you.
Okay, thank you. Next person is Cara Martone.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hi, so it's Cara Martone. I'm at 73 Woodbridge Drive. I had two things. I'm not sure if earlier in the presentation, if Dr. Auger said that the governor would be deciding what plan we actually start the year with, or if North Kingstown decides what plan we start the year
We
with.
expect that it would be the governor.
So the governor makes that decision for all districts?
Yes, well, the Department of Health would be in on the decision. So there may be some opportunities where the Department of Health is working with district by district to make certain decisions. For instance, in the state of Rhode Island right now, Central Falls has a higher rate than the rest of the state. They may be treated a little bit differently, but generally speaking, what we have been told is that the Department of Health would be the ones contacting us, and probably through Governor Raimondo. And she has said to the superintendents that she plans on giving us some indication of how we would start the year in early August, and then in late August would kind of give us a firm, answer on that. If she could make a claim right now that she's expecting full in person in early August, and then there's a spike in the next few weeks in Rhode Island, and feel like it needs to be a hybrid model or limited in person. So we're going to get a lot of direction on that from the governor.
Okay, so I hope that they look at each district and say, wow, and look at the numbers in NK, they're pretty low. And they've been low for a number of weeks, which is encouraging. Considering that, talking about the high school, because I have a high school, so of course that's where I'm sort of focused. I mean, we definitely know that these high school kids, they're out working, they're at the beach, they're, training in hopes that their sports will come back. So I would hope that if they look at our numbers and they stay that good, that would bode well for the start of our school year.
It's hard to say because not every, unless maybe a block island, it's really hard to imagine that really any community is completely self-contained. The point came up earlier about students from other towns at North Kingstown High School, but we have, many of our staff do not live in North Kingstown. Many of them do, but many of them don't. So there is certainly a shared community throughout Rhode Island. One of the things that I'm concerned about, by the way, is that there are other communities that don't have an everyday program in their district, and some of those folks are teachers whose kids go to those schools. And I'm concerned about their ability to get daycare for their kids on the days where they're going to be distance learning in those communities, such as Warwick and Cranston, for instance. So there is a lot of interaction that way, and I think that's why the governor is thinking that a number of these decisions would likely be statewide.
Okay. Well, one more question for you guys. Do you think there would be an opportunity before the start of school to have a meeting similar to this for high school only? Because I'm sure, I can't imagine if I had a senior right now, how I would be feeling about their college applications, their ability to get in with guidance, and just all of that stuff that happens in school.
We'll definitely talk about it with Dr. Morrison. If we need to do something like that to make sure the communication is solid, we will.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, it says Heather iPhone. if you have that as your ID, if you could.
Yeah, good evening. This is Heather Murphy, 41 Mountain Laurel Way. I want to also, I was going to propose, just as Kara just did, that we have a separate high school meeting. I have a senior and I'm panicked, to be honest with you, about how this is going to affect a lot of things. So I think not the forum to really address this tonight because there's a lot of different community members here. So I would just, my hand up on that too. Just a question to clarify. Am I understanding it correctly that Monday in the district there will be no students in the building? Is that correct?
That is under the hybrid plan.
Okay, so the high school.
The full plan at the high school is every other day. But if we go to the hybrid model, then the whole district would be distance learning on Monday, and then there would be the switch off at the high school Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay, so theoretically, if the governor allows us to be full in person, some weeks children would be there 3 days, and some weeks they would be 2 days.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to mention that in efforts to be a community in this, perhaps in terms of carpooling, is there some way we can set up, I don't know, a Facebook page or something? For instance, we are in the north end of town, and I am fortunate that we can drive, and maybe we could be of service to other members of the neighborhood, but it would be hard to identify those people.
Right.
So just a thought, don't need to answer that.
we have thought of something like that. Whatever we can do to help out, we will.
And that, Mike, there was a gentleman who also mentioned, like, what if the car breaks down? Like, then what do we do? You know? But just to throw that out there. I would like to applaud the athletic coaches. They have started to get groups of kids together in an organized fashion over the summer for sports, and I'd like the school district to consider for the non-athletic children, are there clubs that we could still incorporate into this pandemic problem? Not every student likes sports, so can we use those same guidelines the state has had to maybe get chorus after school together as an example?
Yeah, we expect that we're going to hear a lot more about how sports can work, obviously, and probably apply those same kinds of rules, whatever they are, to the after-school programs. There may be a number of after-school programs that can do just fine, having Zoom meetings with one another, but there may be some where, and I don't know how much of this we would do, but there'd probably be some examples of programs that where, using the model that they have with, the strict groups of 15 and all the rules that they follow for these summer camps, maybe something after school could work in that regard, whether it's musical or something else.
Right, because that would help support the emotional aspect of, not seeing your peers, so that would be great. I don't suppose at some point in time you could get a contact email feedback place for the Department of Education. It's difficult to understand from their website where feedback should go.
Okay.
Just a thought.
We'll add that to our FAQ.
Thank you. Last but not least, I have been working every single day with sick patients during this. The month of April was terrifying, but it got much better. And so I want you to pass that along to your staff. That's going to be rough at first, but just hang in there. We've done it. And to just say that I have left my children on their own every day for distance learning, and it was not great. And so, any efforts we can make to get these children out of the home, because I just wish them luck every day on their way to work. So it was really rough.
Yeah.
I know they're high school, but
I totally understand, and we're preparing for every scenario, but we are definitely concerned as well about making sure that our distance learning program is as good as it can be. And we're going to spend a lot of time. That's one of the reasons for the LMS. And for the professional development that we front loaded at the beginning of the year. No matter what scenario we're in, we really feel like we need to do everything we can to make the distance learning piece of it strong, because we don't know, how much we're going to need it.
Right. And thank you so much during a really impossible time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So the next person is Todd Denchick.
Hi there, how are you?
Hello.
Hi. And if you could just put your name and address for the record, please.
Sure thing. My name is Danae Danchick, and my address is 49 Audubon Road. And I just have two questions. If a child checks yes to any of those daily health questions, what is the protocol after that? I mean, it could be something like diarrhea or a cough or something, which is common in a child. Are they going to be required to either one, quarantine for 14 days or to be tested and wait for the results?
Right. We expect that that's going to be part of that playbook that I mentioned.
Okay.
So, I realize that some of the symptoms that are listed on that could be, normal everyday stuff. And I think there's got to be some, understanding from a parent or from a student or a staff member about, is this the same as, I have a cough. Is it my allergy here, or is this something different? And so there's going to be a lot of that kind of, self-assessing being done. And we understand that. And, excuse me, I didn't mean to cough. But it's we're looking for guidance from the Department of Health on that as well. So, so we're clear about what you need to do when you have a symptom.
This is noting to me that she has some comments on that one as well.
Okay.
We will definitely get more guidance, but if you take a look at that actual State of Rhode Island COVID-19 screening tool right now, which is what we've been using for our staff, there is a section on that that says that if you believe the symptoms can be explained by non-contagious issues, so the allergies are a big issue. So there is that caveat on there because, I kind of, none of this is a joke, but I joke around saying, I've been tired since 1983. So some of the questions on there for fatigue and stuff like that for older people, and then for kids, we understand there could be some issues like that. But there is that caveat on that tool. If you already look at it, you don't know what is going to come out for children, but that's something to take a look at.
Thank you, Mrs. King.
And
Mrs. King is the Chief Operational Officer in the district, and she's doing one heck of a job keeping us organized and on this effort. So thanks to her.
Thank you for answering that question. And I just have one more. It's kind of a question / statement. Is that it's going to be hard to fill out a survey about what we would like our children to do if we don't have all of the information. There's a lot that's up in the air, and I know, I don't envy anybody who has to make decisions about this right now. It's hard enough for us with our kids to decide what we want them to do. When we do receive this survey, will we be held to what we prefer? Like, if I prefer to have my kids do distance learning, will I be held to that? Or is that just something that is kind of an if situation? Does that make sense?
No, I definitely understand your concerns. When we put this out, we're going to try to give as much as we know at the time, and we realize that some of these answers may change. We'll try to work with people. If we are, our intention is that the class that is being taught by that teacher includes the kids who are in the school and at home at the same time. And it may be very different from the kids who are at home. They're not going to have that level of interaction that they would be in school, but that means that place is there for them when they do come to school, if that should change, see. So I think that's, in a lot of respects, I think that's got to be the best approach, just because for all kids, there could be periods where they just need to be at home because they've exhibited a symptom. And so it's going to be a real challenge for our educators to be engaged with students who are in the room and at home at the same time. And we're going to do the best that we can. And when we do send out, these seeking information, these surveys, we realize we got to give you as much information as we can have, because you just may not know, and that may be one of the answers on the question too. That right now I don't have enough information to know for sure. So we'll be mindful of that.
All right, thank you so much for answering my questions and for taking the time to do this for all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person I see is Tyler's iPad 2.
Hi, Laura McAdam, 125 Pinecrest Drive. First, thank you for everything you're doing right now. I know how overwhelming this is, how complex. So I have a couple quick questions. On the transportation plan, it seems to imply that our middle school students are going to be on the bus with our high schoolers. Is that correct, or will it be separate buses?
In many cases, it will be the same bus. I suspect that in the northern part of town, there will probably be runs that go directly to Davisville and some that go directly to the high school, and those kids are not on the same bus as much. There may be some where they are, but in the southern part of town, with kids going to the high school in Wickford, those two schools are not far apart from one another. So we would definitely take advantage of that point, and there'll probably be more where there are middle and high school kids on the same bus.
Okay. Having a sixth grader going into Wickford, has there been any discussion on how those buses will be monitored? An 11-year-old with an 18-year-old, they're very different developmental.
I completely understand that. There are districts that do this all the time, and they make sure that the younger students are toward the front and the older students are toward the back. That may be an option here, but we're even told that because of social distancing and protocols and stuff like that, that there may be some protocols for how students get on the bus so that they're not passing each other too much. So, but we will definitely be mindful to try to keep the middle school students apart from the high school students as much as we can.
Okay, great. And then my other question is on the high school. So I have to say, the team there is amazing. The teachers, without fail, communicate fantastic. If a parent chooses to distance learn, I want to just make sure I'm hearing correctly that they have the option to stay in the class that they're in, just
yes.
No promises around the degree of support they would receive.
Exactly. So that may mean that the teacher can check in with them a couple of times a week on the phone or in an email or something.
Okay.
I can't promise that obviously they're going to engage with them like they would the regular class, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my last question is on this 4 and 4. So if I'm understanding correctly, my core English class, I would complete that first semester.
Yes.
And what about those students who are taking a double block? So say 2 years of math in 1 year. Would that expectation be the same, or would that be offered
that's actually what they're already doing that. So that would work out perfectly for them. Dr. Morris, if you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, so we already have, especially the Algebra 1 and the Geometry, we have a recovery program where the students take Algebra 1 every day for the first semester and Geometry every day for the second semester.
Yep.
So it already works that way for kids who are doubling up, and then we have an accelerated program for the Geometry Algebra 2 that works the same way. But we've been pulling individual students' schedules that we know might be repeating. We're examining each one of them and trying to make their schedule the best it can be, so they're not taking, say, 2 maths in one semester and no math in the second semester.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, rather than it being a repeat situation, it's more of a student getting ahead. That course would in fact cover the entire year.
Yes, so if your student was enrolled in Geometry Algebra 2, combined, it will still work the same way. It would be Geometry first semester, Algebra 2 second semester.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You.
Thank you. Quick note, just for everyone here, we had scheduled the meeting to end at 8. We've still got a number of people who would like to speak, and I have no problem running later than we had scheduled to give people an opportunity to do that. So we'll continue on as long as we can. We're not going to go till midnight, obviously, so there may be a point where we need to cut off discussion and ask people to submit their questions by email and everything, but we'll go in for now. So the next person I see is Julie Ostagai.
Hi, how are you all? Thank you so much for everything that you've all been doing to get us set up for next year, or this year. I have a couple of questions.
Just state your address for us, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. 110 Winter Avenue, sorry.
Okay.
So I have a high schooler, he's a freshman this year. He's in the engineering and robotics program, and I just, he's pretty enthusiastic about just getting back into school, even if it's only a couple days a week in person. But I guess what I'm concerned about is obviously the support around, such a rigorous program and him starting out his freshman year, orientation, what are the plans around getting freshmen, set up for success? That's my first question.
Dr. Morse?
Yes, so we're still hoping to have our freshman orientation day, in which we bring the students in first, and we're going to have to be careful about how we group them because we're mixing groups A and B at the same time. So we're going to have to plan carefully to maybe put them in alphabetical groups to maintain that social distancing. We're still putting together our freshman handbook. We're still going to have ways of presenting to them and for them to the protocols and things that we normally do. It may not be as extensive as we've done in the past with all of the activities and things that we do with the freshmen, but we'll definitely reach out to them. And if we can't have the freshman orientation day, we have to kind of look at those things. We will put out freshman orientation packets and have Zoom meets where kids can get to know who their teachers are, and we're going to reach out to them as much as possible because the nerves of the freshmen are well understood, especially in the best of circumstances, never mind these kinds of circumstances. So we will be reaching out to them. Our leadership person, Mrs. McGuire, is working on programs and ways of reaching out to students. So more information will be forthcoming, but that's definitely in our consciousness.
Okay, great. And also along that lines, for us parents who are new to the high school community, I don't know if you plan on having some kind of virtual meeting for parents. That might be nice as well, so we can get to know you guys virtually. And then the other question I had is in terms of grading, just because obviously this is like high school, it's not elementary school anymore, right? And colleges will be looking at grades, and I can't believe I'm even thinking about this at this point, but how is that working in the high school in terms of, this obviously being completely out of normal? Is there some type of weighting? Is it going to be graded, or things going to be graded a little bit more flexibly than, say typically? I just don't know how that's going to work, and you guys might not have that planned out yet. But
yes, so we've been looking at the grading weights because normally each quarter weighs 20% and the midterm and final exam weigh 10%, and we won't have a midterm. We'll only have a final. So we have to reconsider those weights, and within the structure, we've been looking at perhaps more project-based learning, assessment, and a little heavier weight on the formative pieces than we normally do.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you. The other thing I just, now this is switching over to my elementary child. Sorry, thank you. I have a son who's going into 5th grade at Hamilton, and, I don't want to get into a math debate because I'm not about that, but he has major issues with maths, a lot of anxiety, and we didn't have a great experience with the distance learning, not because of anything with the school systems, just for him being on the computer for a long period of time was just not a good fit. I'm considering homeschooling this year for him. I just was wondering how Dr. J would be in support of that in terms of just being able to reinstate him when we get to that point for middle school. I certainly feel pretty confident in being able to handle it, but I just kind of wanted to throw that out there as an option.
Yeah, I definitely understand your concern, and you know, there are people who decide to do homeschooling, and just for the sake of clarity, you know, with the district, you're doing distance learning. But homeschooling is a different thing altogether. At this point, you're kind of detaching yourself from the Northeast Zone School Department and taking full control of your child's education through other methods. Could be through some, you know, internet programming, or just you yourself are becoming the teacher.
Yeah.
And so, and some people have called us and said, you know, how do I get on the home schooling program, when they actually mean they want something connected to the district that's more like a distance learning type of thing. So, as I mentioned, we're trying to do everything we can to organize for some kind of distance learning for people who need it. But that is really a decision for you to make. If you feel like...
No, I understand. Yeah, I understand. I guess my concern mostly is that, and I totally understand the responsibility I'm taking on. I did it kind of half and half. It was a hybrid model for me this year. You know, we did math and ELA through the distance learning, and then everything else was with me. And I felt really great about it. I was lucky I was able to do that, and not everyone can. But I just was wondering about in terms of him getting his spot back come 6th grade, you know, basically. So
you know, people do that. You know, there is a process for, you know, essentially notifying the school committee. They do an approval, but it's pretty much an automatic thing. If you insist that you're going to homeschool, you know, there's an approval coming your way. So, but then when you decide you want to come back, that's still available to you. It is public school, and we're here for the students of North Kingstown. So, but at that point, depending on how long you have done this, there may be some kind of assessment from the administrator in the building about, you know, like let's say you're coming back to the high school. Are they ready for algebra at this point? Geometry? You know, is it honors? Is it, you know, that kind of thing. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you. Next person is Jamie Orsi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Orsi. I live at 70 Misty Meadow Lane. I'm a mom of 3 elementary school kids at Stony Lane. And echoing other sentiments, thank you for your hard work and your effort on behalf of our students. This staff did an outstanding job, and they really knocked it out of the park with the resources they had and the time they had. My question is regarding the hybrid model scenario. So where the elementary kids are in person 2 days a week, and the groups are going to be in at 15 students or less. So my first question is, will siblings go in person on the same days? And my second question is, will the selection of those 15 kids be mindful in terms of a good mix of girls and boys, academic levels, special needs, behaviors? Will the classroom teachers get to pick the 2 groups of kids?
Within limits, we do expect to accommodate families, you know, so generally speaking, each school will divide up the school by, you know, alphabet. So if the kids have the same last name, it's easy. They're coming in on the same day. And even if they don't, and they're in the same family, we're going to make sure they come in on the same day for the sake of the family. The other scenarios, I suppose there will be some of that, but probably not like across the board. We'll, you know, consider each circumstance, you know, uniquely, and if we need to make a special accommodation because of a certain mix in the room, or, you know, on a teacher's recommendation, we'll certainly, you know, it's not an automatic thing, but, you know, certainly have that conversation and see what we can do. But I just don't want to get into a point where, you know, there have been people who say, well, my kid and their friends have, you know, one's a B and one's an S, but they definitely want to come to school the same day. That I can't accommodate. No. You know? So within reasonable limits, we might be able to do some of that.
Right. So are the teachers going to be able to make those decisions?
Well, it would be the principal who makes the decisions, but, you know, if the teacher has some input and a valid reason why, you know, someone in a different part of the alphabet needs to attend on that different day, you know, we're not necessarily going to say no to it. We'll listen and, you know, make a good decision.
Okay, so it's default alphabet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Emily Zilli.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can, thank you.
Hi, Emily Zilli, 149 Bird Cedar Drive. And I wanted to echo what Jamie had just said about the excellent job that the teachers at Stony Lane did. I have 3 children there, and they were excellent with learning, and they were so supportive, and they made it more positive than I could have imagined. So we appreciate all the work that they do there. My question kind of echoes what Jamie had just asked in terms of, I'm wondering, grouping for the elementary students, if you might consider grouping neighborhoods together, which would help with transportation issues, but also children who are probably already playing together would then be going to school on the same days as well, particularly in the elementary, not necessarily the upper grades. So that was one of my questions.
Okay, so that would be really difficult for us to do. And that has to do with, I understand the kids are in the same neighborhood, but that doesn't necessarily mean they line up in the classrooms the way that we would need them. There could be, just an odd number for a particular grade level. So we would start with the idea that, they're alphabetically separated and, available, in that respect. I'm hesitant to commit to any kind of exceptions to that right now, but not that they're not, open to it, but.
Okay, I was just thinking in terms of like the health and the safety, that might help some of the minimization and also like some of the cost of the transportation. I understand it's not going to fall exactly 50-50, but that was just a thought.
Right.
And my other question is, what types of, maybe like town halls or meetings like this are you going to be able to provide for all these parents and families to now learn this new LMS, switching from Google Classroom, which I feel like as parents we had just kind of gotten the hang of by the end of it. Now we're switching over to a very different platform with Canvas. How are we going to be able to make sure that the teachers are all set to use that? Because I have used both in an educational setting, and I find them to be really, really different. So I'm now wondering, like, for these teachers who are going to have to implement this, plus us as parents now and families, how are we going to make sure that we're ready to go at the start of the year so that we are comfortable with that platform?
Right, we do have that in mind, and we're definitely planning on parent professional development around this and teacher professional development, and a lot of it. So we will definitely be in touch about how this works, and I was a part of that process in vetting the systems, and we had a lot of input from people in the community. And the key point here is we wanted something that was really user friendly, because we know teachers have their various levels of comfort with the use of technology, and so do parents. So and we feel like we found the right product. But point well taken. There's definitely going to be a lot of training for everybody.
Great. Are very hopeful that it will be user friendly. That would be ideal. So we appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you very much. I'll tell you folks, I've never felt more like a radio talk show host in my life than I do right now. So our next caller is Emily Zilli. If you would like to speak.
Sorry, I just spoke. I'm all set. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, I'm off on you were still on. Yeah, sorry about that. FVP Virtual Room.
Hi, this is Valerie from Sabato at 421 Westmoreland Lane. I have a concern about the rigorous courses at the high school, AP and honors courses that usually take an entire year for the students. They're now condensed down into one semester. And then on top of that, if a student has like a headache and a cough for one day, and typically probably would go to school with that, but now is being asked to stay home, they're going to be missing a great deal of content that day. So I just have a request that if either if it can't be a live video, if it's something recorded that the teacher could then send specifically just to that student, and even if it's not a video, if it's just an audio recording, that at least there would be something where that student would be able to follow up and receive the information that was presented at that class that day. So just especially with the amount of material that's going to be presented in those classes, I'm concerned missing one day is going to be missing quite a bit of material. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Point well taken.
Thank you. Next name is the Royce.
Hi, Jennifer Roy, 107 Dominic Court. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you. I know you all probably worked so hard on this plan, and I really appreciate your creative thinking and hard work. I think Dr. Morse addressed some of what I wanted to ask about. I'm just a little confused. My daughter is registered right now. She's a rising senior for 11 classes. So I'm just confused about how this works as far as full year classes and half year classes. So the full year would be done in a semester, and a half year class would be done in a quarter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, it's the same number of contact days, given that still half of them are virtual, you have distance learning. But it's the same number, instead of every other day for a whole year, it's every day for a half of a year. And it's the same amount of days, it's just condensed, which the pacing does concern us, but we're looking at some alternatives for some classes. If we can have enough students to do it every other day through the semester, we're exploring those kinds of things. But again, as Dr. Auger mentioned before, those specialty kinds of things logistically have to work for all of the kids in the class and the teacher's schedule to make them work, but we're not opposed to taking a look at those things.
Okay, she's actually a music CTE program kid, so I'm just hopeful that she can get all of her requirements in to finish her CTE program. And I know that chorus will definitely be a problem. And band, I know you're looking at. Strings, I assume, will be fine to go as usual. So no changes to strings, the orchestra.
Right.
Okay, and chorus could possibly be done virtually so that she is able to take that chorus class she registered for?
All the kids will be taking the courses they registered for.
Okay.
The curriculum might have to be modified a bit. So, for instance, in chorus and in band, they might be focusing a little more heavily on the music theory part of it and the sheet reading music and performing at home and recording things at home to submit to the teacher instead of constantly live performances in the classroom. So there will be some modifications to keep everyone safe, but we're hoping, even with the modifications, to have a really solid curriculum.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. And I know some people with rising seniors are concerned about the whole college application, and I have to say, I know you guys will take care of that very well, and everyone in the whole nation is in the same boat, so there will have an understanding. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jeff Fortin.
Hi, Rachel Fortin here, 198 Sylvan Court. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I have a new kindergartner this year who will be starting at Hamilton, hopefully in the fall. Is there any thought to before or after care? Both my husband and I work full time, and 8 to 2 o'clock is not really a full work day.
Right. I don't know if Mrs. King could help us with that one. I know she had been working. There's been a before and after care program that has been stationed at Hamilton, but I'm not sure how that's going to be proceeding. Mrs. King?
So this is Hamilton Elementary School we are talking about?
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes. So actually, we do hope that program will continue. Last year, it was a company called Springboard, and it's the same company. They're called Leading Edge. And they're going to be reaching out to parents to see the interest in possibly a short before school program. We know that would be very short now with an 8 o'clock start, but they do believe clearly that the after school programming will have more interest. So if you reach out to Dr. Auger or myself, I can make sure that you receive information to answer their surveys.
Excellent, that's wonderful news. And my follow-up on that is if we move to a hybrid program, for kindergartners, distance learning is going to be interesting. But is there any opportunity for again, sort of not after school, but some sort of grouping for those children? Because my kids currently are in daycare, and daycare has said they would take them on the off days, but that's mixing, again, another group of children, sort of from a different area.
So I'm not sure that I can answer that question, because if we're doing the on-site hybrid every other day, it would all depend on what makes sense for the company as well. Because what I do want to clarify is that this leading edge company, that is a parent paid program, not a district paid program, okay? So it would have to make sense for them to have enough students on the days that we were in district. I do not believe that we would consider a non-in-district day, but it is certainly something that we can look at if we move to the hybrid model. So in other words, if you have a child that's in one day and not another day, I'm not sure that we would consider having programming all day long on the out day, but it is something that I can discuss with this agency for Hamilton Elementary.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mary Beth Nunnery's iPhone, which may or may not be connected to Mary Beth Nunnery. Hi, are you there?
Hi, I am. Yep, this is Mary Beth Nunnery. I live at 31 Boston Court. And my question was about the high school, the level of rigor of the academics. I understand that in March we were all sort of thrown into the distance learning, but I just noticed that my sophomore got most of her work on Monday, and by Tuesday it was done. She had a couple of things here and there that she would have to log on for, but for the most part, once all her work was done, she didn't have much to do for the rest of the week. And so I was wondering what your feedback had been about how, what the level of activity was during the spring, and whether you feel as if the level of activity is going to be the same, or whether you feel like things have been revamped so that they get more education.
Yeah, so district-wide, you know, the feedback was varied. I mean, a lot of people really appreciated what we were able to do, and there were a lot of students who really thrived with this, but there were also a lot of students that just, you know, had a hard time, much harder time than normal. So it really is kind of a mixed bag in terms of the results, but we are, you know, dedicated to working toward more, like I said, of a regular kind of day-to-day schedule, and more of an accountability for students to like be engaged every day with their classes and that sort of thing. Dr. Morris, I don't know if you want to talk about that uniquely for the high school.
Yes, so we learned a lot of lessons. The departure was so sudden, and with teachers who had little preparation and really, as they say, building the airplane as it was in the air. So we realized afterwards it was the best we could do at the time under the circumstances. And families were still reeling, the students were reeling. It was a very difficult time for everybody. And so we put a lot of flexibility into the schedule to allow those family dynamics where people who were first responders, people who were ill. And now that we've somewhat normalized ourselves and teachers haven't had a chance to prepare for this, we will be putting things in place that will be more structured for students. And especially the every other day, being in person every other day is a really nice, hopefully, start, if we can start that way, because they're going to have a structured day, followed by another day that will have a structured lesson, and that will lead into another structured day. So it's going to be much more closely paced, more thoughtfully paced, instead of the less flexibility about when assignments are due or how they're being handed out. And I think the LMS system is going to help greatly because it will help structure that time for students. The teachers can put out assignments. Canvas allows teachers to put an assignment in and then schedule when it's released and when it's due. So that helps the teachers a lot pace the work better for students. So yes, we learned a lot of lessons and we'll be doing things differently based on those lessons. And I think it's going to be, even if we have to do distance learning, it's going to be an improved system over what we had in fourth quarter.
Thank you. I can appreciate the hard work that had to go into it in March, as you say, building the airplane while it was in the air. I mean, if you look at my daughter's grades, you would say, quote unquote, that she thrived because she probably didn't have anything under a 97, but I don't think that's indicative of how smart she is, but just as an indication of how easy the work was that was presented to her. So my question for today, which you answered, was not that, not to criticize what happened in March, but for you wondering what your feedback had been, and whether you felt like, oh, so many students thrived, so we're going to keep the level of academics where it was, as opposed to maybe that students were thriving because the work was so easy.
Right, and it was week to week, so we never knew how long we were going to sustain the model, and now we're planning for the year. So the system we've created can flex to any model, whether we're fully in school, half in out, fully out, and teachers will be looking at the priority standards and delving deeply into the things that are most important for student learning and keeping the rigor up on those essential standards.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Rebecca.
Hi, this is Rebecca Campbell on Ferry Road in Saunderstown. I have two high schoolers. One's a senior, one's going to be an incoming freshman. And a couple questions. My biggest concern about all of this is 4 months into the scenario, the social emotional development of our students, and understanding from just hearing parents, we're all meeting and coming to school from a different place. Some are coming from working in the field, some are coming in a very fearful place, others not so much. Lots of kids are at the beach, lots of kids are at camp, lots of kids are doing a lot this summer. What is the kind of protocol and plan to, really support where kids are coming in September, hopefully, and their social emotional development? Has there been any discussions from the teachers as how are we supporting these kids? I mean, I've seen a real decline in my children's motivation over the past month or two, and as well as academically. I understand the teachers work March, April, and May, and appreciate the commitment, but I think there is a real decline in our students right now and their motivation to go to school, because it's not going to be what they're expecting. My daughter's going into her senior year, and she's really not looking forward to what is being presented. So I just was really concerned about their mental state going into September.
Yeah, we definitely realize that. Thank you for those comments. We understand it's going to be a different situation all around. Kids are going to need different things from us than they're used to. So I'm not in a position at the moment to kind of go into every detail about how we would respond, but suffice it to say that we are learning from everyone we can learn from. We're bringing in resources that we're going to need, and we're going to do a lot of work with our staff to make sure that they're prepared for kids who are going to have those motivational issues and issues of isolation and depression and everything that comes along with it that we've had to experience. So we realize what we're up against, and we're putting a lot of resources into our own staff being ready for that.
I have just a second comment about that. I know you have a really strong leadership program in the high school. Have you reached out to that group to get any feedback about what this plan looks like, and as far as where they are mentally in preparing for this? Because I think we're not really considering our high schoolers and all of what they're preparing for. We're hearing from teachers and parents, but have you had an opportunity as a staff to have conversations with students yet?
Yes, to some extent. One of those students is Joey Vento, and he represents the student body on our school committee meetings, and he was part of our advisory group as well. And just yesterday, he provided us with a whole host of questions that I believe were not just from him, but from other students as well, who were interested in engaging. So there is some involvement on that level too. Yes.
Yeah, I think that just would be important, as parents are mentioning, to have different schools be represented in high school and middle school and our concerns. I think it would really be beneficial for you all to hear our students' concerns going into this, because I think like we're all coming from a different place. I think that would be really helpful for the staff as well. And as far as the survey that you sent out, we all filled, is there a way to be able to see what and where those rankings came in, or is that something you share with the community moving forward?
We can do that. Yeah, we just haven't gotten to it yet, but we can kind of share the overall summary data. That shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, just curious how many people filled that out and
Right.
what the where people are coming from. Again, I do appreciate all the work you're all putting into this. I know it's a difficult time, but I just did want to express my concern about the kids because I do think they're all out. Some are still not not getting out and doing a lot of things, and other kids living a full summer. And I think it's very challenging that the thing they're going to need to go back to school and have some real strict guidelines to follow and how we all react to that and all of that stuff that we all need to manage moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you.
So next is AJ Pereira. Can you hear me? I can.
Hey, it's AJ again, 98 Meadowland Drive. So after hearing all the comments tonight and the hard work done by all the professionals here at the school district and school committee, I guess the last question I have is, as I stated before, I'm a paramedic. And every time I'm on shift, I'm around people suspected of or positive for COVID. Being basically a single parent, my daughter would, when doing that screening form, could be considered exposed to somebody who had been exposed to coronavirus, etc. Is there a plan on how essential workers, first responders, nurses, children will be considered as far as they're at a higher risk per se for exposure, and are those screening forms, do we have to hand them in every day, or is that something we're just kind of taking the word of folks? Thank you.
Yeah, those are good questions that we will definitely consider. Again, I feel like that is going to be better answered for us from the Department of Health. So we'll definitely include that. If they haven't included guidance on those kinds of things to us, we'll definitely be asking them these questions. They're very good questions, and I definitely see your point.
Okay. That is the last person I see with a hand up. So if there's anybody else who didn't have an opportunity to speak and wanted to, now would be the opportunity to do that. And I don't see any new ones. From my point of view, I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining in on this meeting. It just reinforces what we all know, which is that we live in a community, and it takes a village. A couple cliches there, but they're both true. And we're all in this together. The administration is doing the best they can. The parents are going to do the best they can. The students are going to do the best they can. We on the school committee are going to do the best that we can to provide the best opportunities that we can under the crazy situation that we're all in right now. So,
Mr. Blasberg, I just want to mention, this isn't necessarily needed for the people tuning in, but if you know people who have not been able to tune in tonight, this is recorded and it is on the school committee part of the North Kingstown School Department webpage, so they can access this and see the meeting in full that way, so they can get this information too.
Absolutely. And, based on, the feedback that we received, anyone else who has any questions or comments, please reach out to members of the school committee. The members of the administration are happy to do what we can to answer questions that you might have. But at this point, having gotten to the end of citizens' comments, we've reached the end of our agenda. And unless there are any other comments or questions from school committee members, if so, please unmute and go ahead. If not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn at this time. I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank everyone for coming, and I wish you all the best, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all when your starts again. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.